Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Altition, Director of Client Partnerships here at Pacific Cascade Legal. And today we have Dr. Jack Stoltzfus to talk about the parents' launch code and letting your children go. Jack, fascinating. And I really, really want to get into this. But before we start, can you just sort of talk a little bit about yourself and how you got to you know, be in this, what you're doing and why you think this is so important.
Well, yeah, sure. Happy to do that. The kind of backstory to this is really back to my young adult years and some challenges in my relationship with my father, which I would have described at the time as estranged. Not that we were not talking at all, but there was a lot of distance, a lot of on my part questions about whether this guy really cared about me or loved me or whatever. And so I was struggling with that and had a certain amount of anxiety, anger, resentment going on, which led me to my dissertation work around defining healthy separation of adolescents from parents. And then fast forward, I have three young adult kids about 10 or 15 years ago. And so now I've got the story from the parent side and started to see more and more parents contacting me because they were concerned about their kids stuck in the basement or watching video games or maybe vaping and using pot too much or whatever and not moving forward, not seeming to have a path forward. So I began to work with that particular group. So that's my specialty, helping parents let go of the young adults, help them launch into self-sufficient, responsible adulthood while maintaining a caring connection with the kids. And that last part's really important
Yeah.
because right now, one out of four young adults is estranged during the young adult period from their parents. So they've cut off their communications with their parents. Good news is most of them reconnect at some point, but some just never again communicate with their parents. And it's really heartbreaking for a lot of parents who experience this type of thing.
Is is there like a particular responsibility on the kids, on the parents? I mean, who initiates, the launch, I guess, for a better word.
Well, I think it could be either party. You have some adolescents that are ready to get out of the house at 15 and making plans and they're ready to go. Maybe before the parents are comfortable with the launch pad being ready to help them with that
Yeah.
process. And then there are others that are 23, 24, 25, and they're just stuck. They don't seem to know kind of where they should go, what they should be doing, who they are, and they're struggling with this. And in that sense, the parents may have to do more of a push, more of a effort to kind of help them move forward and get some kind of path and direction for themselves. So, uh, it's a collaborative process between parents and the young adult to get to this healthy launch place. So.
So do you get in your practice, do you see both the adult children and the parents, or do you focus one on more, or are they both sort of in need of some help?
Oh, yeah, in most cases they both are, but the initial interest comes from the parents for the most part. I've had a couple young adults call me and say, "Hey, I need some help with my relationship with my parents," but mainly it's the worried, concerned parent that calls me. And then what I do is I challenge the parents to work with me and their young adult son or daughter on developing a path toward the future. And I interview the young adult, and I set that up by just saying, "Hey, I'm working with your parents as a parent coach. I need to understand, where you're going, what your plans are, what kind of support you need from your parents, so I can tell your parents that, and then they can figure out how they can support you going forward." And I've had good buy-in from that in terms of that approach. I'm not their therapist for the young adult. I'm just there to get information to help me coach the parents. And then we bring them together. So the parents then their response is what they'll do to help the young adult on this journey that they've laid out, the path forward. And then they'll also define what they won't do. These are things we're not going to do for you because you have to step up and do these things for yourself. And if they're living at home, there would be some expectations. Okay, if you're going to continue to live at home, we have some expectations. Typically, one of them is you're going to either be going to school or working or part-time school and work and part-time work, but doing nothing is not going to be not going to work for us as parents. So that's basically the model, and I have described that in my book, The Parents Launch Code, how parents can kind of shift from the day-to-day skirmishes on, you're up too late playing video games, you're not busting your dishes back from your room, you're leaving your clothes all over the place, into a future framework where we're working now together rather than, in a contentious type relationship.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. There are a lot of times where the kids are practically estranged from their parents, but still living in the house. And getting that sort of, bringing them together again, just, so you can launch them.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a typical pattern is a late teen, young adult spending a lot of time in their room, sometimes not even coming out for dinner. They may get their food later on. Maybe they've got a little job, DoorDash or delivering some pizzas, but they don't have a plan forward. They're staying up late, they're gaming, and they're not really, there's not a lot of dialogue going on between the parents and them. So I try to facilitate that connection by the interview of the young adult, get that information, get the parents to respond to that interview information and then bring them together. And one of the things I say to them, when we're together is, look, both you and your parents, you love your parents, they love you. Your parents and you want you to be happy and successful in your future. And thirdly, your parents and you want this transition period to go smoothly. And everybody agrees on that. The young adult agrees, yeah, that's true, that's true. So let's work together. Let's be partners in this process and help you move forward on your path toward this independence and self-sufficiency.
Is the launch the end? I mean, okay, they're out of the house now. Now we're done with it. Or does there need to be some follow-up to keep that relationship? Because a lot of times I know the kids can move away and then, you hardly ever talk to them.
Yeah, it's so the most important thing is to have this positive connection, this caring connection continued. But then the level of interaction, the level of connection with the young adult can vary quite a bit. A lot of times, just moms and daughters are connecting almost daily. Um, sons and mothers and sons and fathers less so. I mean, male young adults seem to not have that much desire to kind of text or call. Although, some research has shown that nowadays, parents, mothers and fathers connect with their kids. About 50% connect with their kids almost daily. So it's a text message or, a phone call or whatever, but they're in touch with them pretty much on a daily basis. At least half of mothers and fathers do that. So,
Is there, this is kind of a weird question. Is there some sort of a similar thing? If let's say they've actually moved out, they're actually not in your house, but you're having no real connection. You're not there's like anger brewing. Um, maybe they there was a divorce. I mean, can these sort of things be sort of helped as well?
Yeah, it's so there's a author and colleague of mine called his name is Josh Coleman, who's written a book called Rules of Estrangement. So he does a lot of work with parents who have estranged relationships with their kids. And again, mostly it's parents contacting him. Uh, he indicates that in his research, over 70% of the cases where there's an estranged young adult from a parent, there's a divorce in the background. And right now, the research shows that 1 in 4 uh, young adults are estranged from their father, and 6% are estranged from their mother. But a lot of times, what happens is that particularly in any contentious divorce situation, the kids as teenagers or young adults may side with one parent against the other parent. And then it's kind of in terms of almost being loyal. I'm not
Yeah,
going to have anything to do with that other parent. So it unfortunately is not a good it's not a good thing for the kids when that
yeah,
happens, and it puts a strain on that relationship with both parents for that matter, because the parent who's the kid that's loyal to the parent feels the strain of, well, I can't talk to my dad or my mom or something because, that would upset the parent I'm loyal to. So it's uncomfortable for the kids, and it's not a good thing to do to your kids. I think you should encourage them to make those contacts and figure out their relationship with that estranged parent.
yeah.
See if you can work it out.
What if speak back to divorce a little bit? Maybe the kid's not, angry, but they're living in two separate households now, and does that add anything, or is there any to making it difficult? If I came in, and said, I want to, work with you to kind of make this leap for my kid, but I don't talk a lot with my ex. What should I mean, should I start doing that? I mean, do we do this together or separately?
Well, I've had several situations that I've worked with over time where there are divorced parents, and um, fortunately, in a number of these situations, the divorced parents are communicating and are collaborating, and that makes it a lot easier. Even though there might be some distinctions there where I have a case right now with a 26, 27-year-old who's living with a father, and the father and mother are divorced, and he's working on a software project, and he's and the mother's saying, "Hey, you need to get a job," and the father's saying, "Well, give him some time to see if he can, you know, monetize this and make this a marketable kind of software piece." And the mother's kind of, "Okay, well, he's living with you, so it's your choice on that." And so they still work together, even though there may be some difference of opinion on what the best approach is. But even where there's not a divorce, you can still have the problem often that occurs where one parent is more the good cop and the other parent's
Yeah.
the bad cop.
Yep.
I wrote a blog entitled "Good Cop, Bad Idea." So the
I like
parents
it.
need to work together, find some common ground in this. So if in service of the kids, for the
Yeah.
best interest of the kids.
Well, yeah, that seems to be the whole gist of what you're getting at is maybe they don't know it, maybe they fight it, but this is in the best interest of the children. I mean, that's sort of the starting point, it feels
Sure.
like. So how would another kind of interesting thing is, you know, there's a launch, they go up and out, but there's a landing. And you talked a little bit about what a successful one was, but are there like characteristics you encourage or you want to see or help them see, to kind of fully launch and land the young adult?
Yeah. Well, I think that certain over the years, there's this research on development of different ages. And so, for development tasks for young adults are basically, I call them the four I's. Um, Identity development, so parents can help the young adult, in a supportive way, find out who they are and what they want to be and what they want to do in their life. That's their identity issues. Secondly is the independence, and that's financial, but also emotional independence, either in terms of having a good caring relationship, but not one that's dependent. They can't make decisions without asking mom or dad, or being in a negative relationship with parents. That to me is not being independent at that point or
Right.
launched. And then the third thing is intimacy, and it's not just about a significant other relationship. It's having close friends, and that's been a growing problem because there's been a drop off in just friendships, drop off by particularly Gen Zs now, who are of all the generations the loneliest generation at this point in time, and so they've lost some friendships, and that's all part of the development. The last thing I include, the fourth I, is intention, and that is having some sense of purpose, some sense of what I want to do with my life, what's important to me, how I can make a difference. That's not always considered. The first three are pretty much everybody agrees on. The last one, I think, can be really helpful if a young adult gets clear about, what they want to do to make their mark in life, and that's really important. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Is you know everybody, can you be in a situation where the kids are ready, want to do this, parents want to do this, but you look at your kid and you go, I don't know if you're quite ready. Um, I don't know if you know where the dishwasher is. I mean, kind of in like again, space launches, they do a lot of training. I mean, is there some sort of training that can go on while you're still in the house with your adult child to help?
yeah, I mean, I think it's got to start early on to teach kids about being responsible and about cause and effect, and there are consequences to the choices that you make. And I think too often over time, I think our parents have become more and more invested in the happiness and success of their kids. And so if they're unhappy, may they intervene to soften the consequence. You you got a speeding ticket. Well, I guess, well, I'll take care of it this time, because everybody makes a mistake or whatever. No, no, you should pay for the speeding ticket. You, you now blocked a good lesson to be learned in that as an example. So I talk about when parents need to make a decision about, how to balance this love and backbone, because that's really kind of what I call it, the tough love and the caring, unconditional love. Put those two things together. Parents should ask themselves, is this decision or action based on love, or is it fear or anxiety or resentment or, some other emotion like that? And the second question, is this decision or action consistent with my principles, my values, being responsible, keeping your promises, telling the truth, those types of things. And then thirdly, is this decision or action that I'm going to take likely to increase their independence or increase their dependence?
Right.
And I think parents can ask those three questions. They can make a pretty good decision, I think, at that point.
But it doesn't mean you don't help when they after they've left. I mean, this isn't like a cutoff. You
No,
know, now
no,
you're totally on your own.
right. No, I mean, 60% of parents these days are continuing to fund their young adults in one way or another. Maybe things that are kind of traditional, like helping with the wedding costs or helping with maybe a down payment in a house, which for a lot of Gen Zs and even millennials right now is kind of out of reach.
Right.
So those are ways that parents can, during their independent young adult years with their kids, still be helpful to them. But I think beyond that, I think it's important that parents, have some kind of, ask their kids to have some skin in the game. Okay,
Yeah.
I need money for this. Well, what can you do to get the money? And then maybe I will have a matching grant or something. When my oldest daughter and son had twins, they ended up with three kids in daycare, and the daycare costs were 2,500 a month, which
Yeah.
is which is a significant mortgage payment.
Yeah.
And my wife and I just thought, should we be helping out? We could help them out. We could have bailed in and said, we'll cover your childcare costs. But we thought, no, let them struggle with this because it's important for them to figure out how to get through this. And when the kids finally went to school, it was the biggest uh, raise they'll ever get in their life. 2,500 bucks now available to them, and now the feeling that they have of we got through that, we were able to struggle and we made it through that. I don't want to take that away from them, but it doesn't mean you never help either.
Right.
So
Some of the we've talked about the good. Some of the how what could be a bad launch, I guess I should say, is like because I know people who are, maybe in their 30s, even getting their 40s, and they're like estranged from their parents because they're still mad at them
yeah.
for something that happened years and years ago.
Oh yeah. I mean, and this population of estranged young adults, and they are young adults or middle-aged adults or whatever. And I've seen some people in older years that are still mad at their parents or not
Yeah,
talking to their parents. It's not something that necessarily just goes away. And I would say a lot of therapy offices are dealing with those family of origin problems and issues.
yeah,
And my bias is to try to help that adult child rebuild a relationship with the parent because I think that's normal. That's what there should be that natural connection with the parents. Now there are exceptions if there's been abuse, sexual
yeah,
abuse, toxic relationship, and drug parents with drug issues, and you just say I can't be involved in their lives. Okay, that's an exception. But from the parent side, I think parents can do things to reach out to that estranged young adult and ask, is there something that I've done that has hurt our relationship? That could you help me understand that? And then be willing to apologize to that young adult for that action. I mean, I think, see, parents are the guiltiest segment of our society. I mean, we're always saying, oh, I wish I had done this or I could have done
yeah,
this better or whatever. So I think that all parents probably have some opportunity to apologize unless they're perfect parents. And
yeah,
that helps with the guilt part for the parent, but it also helps to soften maybe that resentment or that anger that may still be there with that adult child. So,
yeah. It feels like, you know, a parent who isn't, doesn't know if they can do this, how am I going to do this? And comes to you and you help them. It feels like a legacy thing almost because the kids who have a successful launch, it feels to me like when they have kids, they're going to be more likely to have their kids have a successful launch. You're sort of cutting off the throw them out of the cave, you know, legacy.
mhm. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, modeling is one of the strongest methods of learning. And so if you're seeing your parents figuring out how to let go, how to support your identity development, your independence, which is the shift that parents need to make from being focused on control and direction to consulting and coaching
Right.
in the late teen and young adult years. Um, you know, and they experience that, then they've introjected that, taken that into themselves, and now they have that capacity or that legacy experience that they can then use to successfully launch their own kids then at
Yeah.
that point too. Yeah.
I saw something on your website and I just want to comment about it. We're getting close to the end. We're just blown through time. But you talk about whether a child can actually have a successful launch, even if they remain living with their parents, because that's happening more nowadays.
Oh, absolutely. So I tell parents that where they live is not the litmus test of whether they're launched or not. But obviously, the stereotypical view in our society is, well, they got to be out of the house. They're not launched if they're still living at home. But my argument is, if they're living at home, they've got a job, they're paying rent, they're helping around the family, they're doing their laundry, they're cleaning their room, they're cooking meals, participating in a kind of roommate type manner. I think they're launched. Why would you not? They're self-sufficient, they're independent, they're taking care of their expenses and responsibilities. Then they're launched. Doesn't matter where they're living. Just, on the other hand, if somebody's in an apartment, but the parents are paying the rent and giving them money for expend expenditures, they're not launched, in my opinion, even though they physically may be out of the home.
Right. So this is a little more complex than just, you know, what it originally kind of looked like. So getting the kid, out of the house and with the job.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like that. I like that. Wow. Wow. We have just run through our time. And so unfortunately, we have run out. Dr. Jack, I want to thank you so much today for being here to talk about this. But before we leave, for anyone who's listening, um, and they maybe feel like, hey, I'd like some help on this, how can they get a hold of you?
Okay. There's a couple things I'd recommend. One is my website, which is called parentslettinggo.com. So you can contact me through that. There's a place there where you can request a consultation. And I'm doing more parent consultations across the country at this point as a parent coach. Um, you know, and also and most of the time when people will call me and say they'd like to, have a consultation with me, I will say, why don't you get a hold of my book first?
Yeah.
The Parents Launch Code, Loving and Letting Go of Our Adult Children. See if that helps you figure this out. If it doesn't, then contact me. I wrote that in a way to like, as a self-help book to parents to give them the roadmap for this launch process. But sometimes it's not working. Well, I've read it, I've tried, but it's just not working very well at this point. And so the book, they may need more of that consultation. And typically my consultations don't end up being much more than 5 sessions, so it's not like it's an extended period of time. I'm coaching them, so they're going to run the show. They're doing the work. This is not a therapy experience where I take over and start doing
Right.
some kind of long-term therapy with people. That's not the focus of this. So.
And I'm assuming we can call you if our launch code is stuck. If maybe they actually did get out of the house, but they're at our house for dinner every night, and we're doing their laundry, and so this is sort of an ongoing thing you can help people with.
Yeah, I mean, I have it's basically an answering service, and I encourage people to contact me at Dr. Jack Stoltzfus at gmail.com, and then just tell me what's up. I need some help with this, and then I can get back to them right away. Sometimes the phone will end up in telephone tag, and I'm trying to get home, and they're trying to get hold of me, and So I encourage people to just email me, Dr. Jack, Drjack, and then my last name, Stoltzfus @gmail.com. And then I can get right back. Tell me what's going on, what help you might need, and I'll get back to you, at least with some suggestions or maybe, an offering of some consultation to the parents around the launch process. So,
I love it. I love it. Well, like I said, unfortunately, it's time is up. But again, thank you so much for being here to talk about it. In not in doctor speech as much as just in common sense and things to do. And
yeah.
that's really helpful because then people like me can understand it.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So,
Not a problem. Everyone else, thank you also for joining us today. If anyone has any further questions on today's topic, well, you can post it here and we can get you connected with Jack, or you can get a hold of him yourself. And